Good morning, everybody. Um, I see that the participants are joining us, and welcome to Fluid-Aire Dynamics webinar on the energy incentives that are available in the various areas of Northern Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. And want to encourage you to ask questions through the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be monitoring that. And we'll bring those questions in when the time is appropriate. And wanted to introduce our speakers today. We have Brad Taylor, who is our sales engineer and co-owner of our company. Chuck Arnold is out of our Burnsville, Minnesota office, handling Minneapolis and Minnesota. Tim Miller is with us from our office in Franklin, Wisconsin. And handles Milwaukee and all things Wisconsin. And we just wanted to welcome you. And we'll be covering several items today, basically involved in the programs that are involved in Northern Illinois, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, and the various items. And thank you, Audrey, for getting me to that slide. So we'll be going over those the various topics that you're seeing on the screen there. And we just want to make sure that you understand the benefits to upgrading using these incentives is that they lower your energy cost. They cover the cost of all or most of the cost of equipment upgrade on a compressed air system, and it brings you better efficiency throughout the system. Before we really dig in, I wanted to just describe generally all three of these programs from ComEd, Xcel Energy, and Focus on Energy involve two different categories. They're either prescriptive, which is basically a menu of items and numbers that are available that are incentives or rebates for particular kinds of equipment that you can put into your system, or there are custom programs that require pre-approval, pre-qualification, some verification and measurement, and you do have the ability to completely customize. So before we go too much further, wanted to just get an idea from our audience on what type of equipment you are operating. And so this is what I'm asking you here is, does your operation use fixed speed, variable speed, both, or neither? So if you could participate in that, and we'll stop and report on that in a couple of moments. But I'll go ahead and let Brad Taylor take it from here and talk to us about the programs offered in Northern Illinois. So Brad.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Mike. Can you hear me clearly?
You can be a little louder.
Okay, very good. So thank you for the brief introduction there. I'm going to try and cover off quickly on the programs here in Northern Illinois. Question I often get out in the field is, why do power companies offer these incentives when they're in the business of selling power? Well, here in Illinois, or with the sector that I think it's all of Illinois, is the power is deregulated, meaning they don't actually make money on the power. ComEd makes their money on delivery. So what they do is they're incentivizing power users to use less energy so that they don't have to expand their grid. Essentially, the more customers that they can meter, the more money they make. So that's really the pretense for why these incentives are in place. So that being said, they have three different sectors of the incentive programs. The small business is anything lower than 200 kW in peak demand. And that's new for 2021. Prior to 2021, it was max of 100 kW. And this can be verified two different ways. If you look at your energy bill, about 1/3 down from the top on the right-hand side of your bill, in bold print will state 0 to 100. That is automatically classified as small business. Those of you that are in the 100 to 400 sector, you you'll have a little bit more work to do. Scrolling down the bill towards the middle of the other charges section, you will see a line item for distribution facilities charge. And it's typically at a rate of anywhere from 6 to 10 cents is what I've seen. And it will have a KW quantity that they're charging you for. That number needs to be 200 KW or less for 12 continuous months. If so, you can qualify for the small business programs. So it's by far the most generous program of them all. And we'll go over some of those features here in a moment. The other two are the standard prescriptive programs and then the custom programs. So interestingly enough, the small business program covers a large portion of compressor users out there. When we look at the compressed air users as a whole, about 80 to 85% are below 50 horsepower. So we find on an average of about 35 to 40% of our customers qualify for this program. That being said, when you look at your project, the small business program can cover between 60 and 90% of the project cost. Obviously, larger the compressor horsepower, the more incentive there is, and generally covers more of a percentage of the project. There are a couple stipulations. I mentioned one earlier about the 12 months trending below 200 kW. The other is you must have a fixed speed rotary screw compressor already installed. They don't want to be incentivizing something that's not going to give them the returns they're looking for in energy. And compressor systems, I don't think they exactly limit it to the horsepower, but the larger horsepowers typically push accounts into above the 200 kW mark. So it's very rare that we would see compressor systems much larger than 100 horsepower qualifying for the small business program. Other rebates, we talked about the standard or prescriptive briefly, similar to the variable speed offering on the small business side where they're promoting $400 per horsepower. The prescriptive program or prescriptive rebate for BFDs on the standard is $85 per horsepower. They're also covering zero loss drains and high efficiency air nozzles. Now, high efficiency air nozzles can include blowguns, which are the simplest form. But any of you that are using jets or nozzles for parts ejection out of a die and stamping, it's very common to see open blowing copper tubes. This would be a great addition to energy savings campaign to add some energy efficiency type nozzles. And then refrigerated air dryers. They are 3 different types out there in the refrigerated sector. Of course, there is the non-cycling type dryer that just constantly runs regardless of the load. And then there are 3 types of energy savings type dryers that are incentivized by ComEd. Firstly, the thermal mass cycling type dryer, which they incentivize $1 per CFM. And then the digital scroll at $2 per CFM. And my favorite, which is the variable speed drive refrigerant dryer at $3 per CFM. And just a quick note on the variable speed type, typically we don't see them until after about 500 CFM, and they hold a very constant dew point. So one of my favorites.
Hey, Brad, before you go on, I wanted to share the results from that poll, and it was 40% are using fixed speed, 20% are using variable speed, and 40% are using both. So wanted you to know that. And also have a question from Matt. He's asking, is the 12 months below the 200 kW an average, or does it need to be under 200 each month?
So it has to be under 200 each month. And there is if you send me your account number, I can plug it into the tool that ComEd's provided us, and I can generate a Excel report to make it very easy for you. But yes, it does have to be under 200 kW for 12 continuous months.
Thank you.
I have had, just a note on that, I've had some customers that have multiple suites of their building with multiple meters all wrapped under one bill. ComEd does allow you to separate those bills into separate accounts. It'll take some time, but it is a strategy to getting a particular suite covered under the small business or qualifying for small business going through that route. May take a year to get the to qualify, but in some instances, very much worth it if you can wait. Other prescriptive rebates, desk and dryers, $4 per CFM. This is directly related to the controls on the desk and dryer, energy savings type controls or demand purge control. Flow controllers are $10 per CFM. And then something new has been air storage. They're allowing $1.50 per gallon for increased storage. Again, trying to limit the amount of cycles on a fixed speed type compressor. And then low pressure drop air filters. For every 2 PSI, we can lower the average plant pressure, saves 1% in energy. And that's a very easy, low-hanging fruit type incentive that can be implemented quickly. Another program that's been very successful, ComEd launched, I believe, 2 years ago, is their Fix It Now program. And as the name states, it is simply allows us to do a very quick implementation of certain types of projects in your facility. Most commonly done in the compressed air sector is leak detection and repair. So they're paying qualified service providers $6 per horsepower, to be operational horsepower in your compressor room, to basically do the paperwork and review the system. And then $20 to identify any leak in your facility, and then an additional $100 to repair any of those leaks within your facility. So what we have found is that at that rate, we're able to cover upwards of 90% of the leaks within your facility, largely because leakage is found in the simple down and dirty Milton coupler or Insta tube fittings, slit hoses, bubbly hoses, simple O-rings, things of this nature. Of course, there's some of the more expensive leaks, such as a large cylinder or a metric cylinder has to be sourced from overseas, or a leaky counterbalancer on a punch press. Of course, these are very costly repairs that would be in excess of the $100 ComEd's providing us. But in the report, we've identified it, identified the CFM of the flow, and with your help, we can put an ROI to that number based on what that repair would cost, and you guys can make a decision in the field as to whether that's something your company would like to pursue. There is just a very simple application. We need a simple signature and we can get launched, and very simple to process. We take a photo of every leak in the facility, document everything into an Excel workbook, and very, very helpful report. And this helps not only you guys conserve energy, but it helps bring capacity back to your system, maybe eliminating the requirement of an additional horsepower compressor. So like the small business program, there are also other offerings, including the high efficiency air nozzles, which again is commonly just the blowgun. Low pressure drop filters is also $3.50. And then the no loss drains are $100 per drain.
Okay, before we move on to the Xcel Energy portion, and Chuck Arnold is going to speak to that, I did want to run one other poll here. And so want to throw this past you real quick, folks, if I can. And I will do that on the next section. So I'm going to get that figured out. So Chuck Arnold from Minneapolis, you talk to us about the programs available from Xcel Energy.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes, loud and clear. Go ahead,
good.
Chuck.
All right. So yeah, with Xcel Energy, there are 3 essential programs, one being compressed air studies. And with a compressed air study, generally that's for a 50 horsepower system or larger. We come in, we locate and tag air leaks, we monitor pressure, flow, sometimes KW, other items, and we will put together a report for you based on the findings, and have paybacks and energy saving measures and so forth. And that study kind of becomes the Bible, so to speak, for the plant for the next 5 years, because anything that's done regarding compressed air, as far as Xcel's concerned, comes back to that air study. So it's a once every 5-year program. It is paid, generally speaking, 100% by Xcel Energy. And you can see the graduated incentive there. The bigger the system, the more they pay for. So the responsibility of the customer for air studies to make sure the vendor gets paid, and we all enjoy getting paid in the end, is to pay 75% of the total leakage. So you get the benefit of leaks getting tagged. You get after you fix them, you get the energy savings, and then we submit the paperwork to Xcel, and boom, Xcel pays us directly. The nice part about that program is there's no cash flow interruption for the customer. So the commercial aspects of it are handled between us and Xcel. Prescriptive rebates, similar to what Illinois has. New VSD compressors, 40 horsepower and down, qualify for $150 a horsepower. That essentially gets you into a VFD for less than the cost of a fixed speed. So it's really a pretty nice rebate. Zero loss drains are $200 a drain. Mist eliminators qualify for $150 per CFM of capacity. Mist eliminators is not something that most people are going to be familiar with, probably, or even installing. They're essentially a large low pressure drop filter, and those kinds of filters are the reason why they're incentivized, I guess, is the low pressure drop. Pressure drop is money, and that's why there's an incentive there. You can also get the same benefit by oversizing standard filters, and that's a practice that we use often, and oftentimes a better solution. Cycling dryers cycle up and down with your plant's load, so the refrigerant compressor isn't on all the time. That'll give you $2 per CFM of dryer capacity. And again, people that need desiccant dryers, there's a demand control, it's called, on there that saves purge air. That'll net you $1,500 per dryer, and $1 per CFM additional of the capacity of that dryer. Custom projects. This kind of gets back to our air study that I spoke of earlier. These projects for anything above 50 horse on compressors. So you can still get the prescriptive rebates on the dryers, mist eliminators, drains, and so forth. But on compressor systems, you don't do a study, the rebates are pretty paltry. So on 50 horse systems, we do the study, we give a recommendation, we send an engineering workbook into Xcel describing what we're going to do, what the energy savings is going to be, and then they'll send you out what we call it's an approval letter. So they need to be pre-approved, and they'll let you know, hey, for doing XYZ, we're going to offer you $10,000. And then at that point you can move forward. So That's how the program works, and the rebates, generally speaking, will come back in about 6 weeks. So you do the project. Once it's installed, we have to document, provide some invoices, electrical invoice, and so forth, and then they'll send you the rebate check.
Great. Thank you so much, Chuck, for that. And again, audience, if you have any questions at all, if you'd use the Q&A in the bottom bar of your menu there under Q&A, and we'll take questions after Tim covers the Wisconsin portion. But I do want to figure out how to launch my other poll here. And this poll is just ask you, how energy efficient is your compressed air system? Excellent, pretty good, terrible, or I have no idea. So if you'd enter those while Tim is speaking to the systems or the programs available in Wisconsin. So Tim Martin.
How you guys doing, everyone? Can everyone hear me okay? Wonderful. Wisconsin offers 3 programs very similar to that of Minnesota, Xcel and ComEd. We offer a prescriptive incentives, the compressed air studies, as well as any custom projects that would have to be essentially approved through Focus on Energy. With the prescriptive incentives, the new VSD compressors, they have an incentive of $40 per horsepower. This is aimed more towards the purchase and installation of a new VSD compressor. This purchase must replace a pre-existing non-VSD compressor, typically your fixed speed rotary screw or piston unit, and or be included with any new construction installation. There are limits, there are no limits to the horsepower, but to qualify for these requirements, the compressor must run a minimum of 2,000 hours annually. The system must not have previously used any VSD compressors and must not have a backup or redundant systems do not qualify. VSD vacuum pumps, we offer a $40 per horsepower unit, and that's for up to 30 horsepower vacuum pump itself. Cycling refrigerated dryers as well. The state offers 50 cents per CFM. For anything that's a cycling refrigerated dryer and or a variable speed refrigerated dryer. Again, this incentive is applied to the smaller CFM value based on the dryer itself and the air compressor. In regards to the dew point demand controls for desiccant dryers, the state offers $2 per CFM on the dew point demand controls for heatless, heated, and blower purge desiccant systems. Typically these systems, the controls will help reduce the volume of air required to purge the desiccant dryer system. The incentive is applied again to the smaller CFM value between the dryer and the air compressor. And the thing is, they cannot be used for new or retrofit projects. Again, with zero loss drains, it's $80 per drain, which is a great incentive. Obviously, these drains are designed to eliminate the loss of your compressed air versus your manual and timer-based drains. Most of these systems are used with your load and no load, variable speed, variable displacement, or centrifugal compressors. Pressure and flow controllers, the state is offering $8 per horsepower on your air system. Typically, these flow controllers must be installed on the main pressure header, drop line regulators, and filter regulator lubricators are not eligible for this program. Air nozzles, moving into high efficiency air nozzles, they'll offer $8 per nozzle. Heat recovery, this is a very common one here in Wisconsin. It's $50 per horsepower. What this involves are systems that will collect the heat from your air compressor and either vent the warm air back inside or that they'll take the warm air and vent them inside in the winter and vent the hot air to the outside in the summer. Compressed air load shifting, that's going to be $200 per horsepower that is shifted. And that's for inappropriate or inefficient uses of your compressed air to another type of a process. Some examples might be the use of compressed air for blow off or cooling or air motors itself. The compressed air load shifting incentive is mainly designed for pre-existing buildings only. And the inappropriate use must have an annual runtime of approximately 2,000 hours annually. So other thing with the compressed air load shifting, the projects do not require pre-approval from the state. Compressed air studies, we offer a free service for everyone. It's through data logging. By doing this, these compressed air studies will allow us to cover up to 50% of your qualifying process assessment, up to $7,500 through the state. It also covers leak detection and repair up to $4 per horsepower. Custom projects. In regards to the custom projects, focus on energy outside of the scope of your pre-existing prescriptive incentive offerings that I just explained. The custom projects and custom incentives, these projects must be pre-approved by the Focus on Energy prior to the equipment being purchased, whether it's being ordered or installed. This incentive amount is typically determined based on the estimated energy savings through Focus on Energy, and the efficiency payback on the project must be between 1.5 years and 10 years to be approved. How to get started? Talk with one of us sales engineers here at Fluid-Aire and let us stop in and assess your system. Number 2, have a free data logging study performed. Again, this is a free service for you, and it's going to help us allow to see what your usage is on overall kilowatts using our data loggers. Identify upgrades to maximize the programs available, and consider leak detection and repair, and let us assist you in every step of the process. So that's what we're here for.
Fantastic. Thank you for covering that, Tim.
Yeah, no
And
problem.
the result of that secondary poll was nobody thought they were doing a great job. There were 38% said they thought they were doing a pretty good job. 25% said terrible, and 38% said no idea. So there's some good work to be done here, and you can rely on the Fluid-Aire team or your local energy incentive provider to help you make those decisions and assess your situation and bring some additional value to your system. With that, we have a couple of other topics that we can go into. We've got about 10 minutes left. We can talk about the benefits of variable speed upgrades, or we can get into some data logging here. So Brad, maybe you could just cover the overall benefits of the variable speed upgrades for those that are using fixed speed units, and then talk about data logging, and we'll be done.
Yep.
Great.
Okay. Are there any questions we could cover at this point, Mike?
No, I don't have any questions at this point. So
okay, very good.
We can just go ahead and move on. So
just to answer or make a comment on that last poll, those of you that don't know if you're energy efficient or are pretty sure you're doing a poor job, first step is get someone that understands compressed air systems just to do a simple review or a walkthrough of your facility. There's lots of simple things that can be covered quickly. In the Chicago area, those of you that are in the ComEd network, take advantage of that Fix It Now program. It's a no-brainer, literally is. And then as Tim mentioned, with the auditing or data logging, it shows a lot of interesting facts just through the reviewing the load profile after we've completed that 7-day auditing. It's very simple to do, it's not intrusive to your production, and takes all of about 15 minutes of your time to collect that data. What it'll also tell us is those of you that are running fixed speed type compressors will gain understanding as to how much of that time is spent in the unload mode. When fixed speed compressors achieve their unload pressure, they don't turn off like a smaller piston type compressor would. And so what they do is they unload them. The motor continues to spin, we blow down the sump tank, and the air engine motor continue to consume about 1/3 to 50% of its full load energy. So that energy is just emitted into our facilities in a form of heat, which those of you that have air conditioned plants with the compressor sitting in the middle of them, that's an additional cost that you're having to deal with. So most systems today would have at least one variable speed type compressor on the system. With one VFD, we can use that to control up to three compressors on the system total. Beyond that, we need to get into sequencing controllers. But the VFD, its role is to keep the compressor fully loaded at all times without allowing it to overpressurize by varying the speed at which the pump is producing compressed air. By doing that, the input KW is proportional to that output flow, nearly 1-to-1. There is a performance curve to every pump, but for the sake of this conversation, it is pretty linear. So that's direct savings. As Chuck had alluded to earlier, the VFDs and most of these incentives today offset the additional cost of that feature. So when considering another compressor, it's kind of a no-brainer today if you don't have a VFD on your system to go ahead and add that feature to the purchase, as the incentives today offset that additional cost. And then the added benefit is the reduced energy consumption, which is dollars right to the bottom line in your facility. Chuck, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
No, I think that's a good overview. Thanks.
The other benefit to a variable speed drive is it maintains a constant steady pressure. So as you can see in this diagram, the compressor at the top there, that would be a pressure profile of something that's being managed by a variable speed drive versus the bottom graph. There is a load unload compressor. You're spanning between two pressure set points. So the rule of thumb we use in this industry is every 2 PSI, we can reduce your average pressure in the plant, saves 1% energy. Of course, direct costs related to producing the compressed air itself, but the pressure is directly proportional to the flow of unregulated sources or unregulated uses, such as leaks, the cylinders on your machines blowing, you name it. Every PSI is pushing that much more CFM through that orifice. Then, of course, lower pressure is reduced wear, it's reduced heat, lower RPMs, reduced noise, lower maintenance. You may get a higher quality production output, especially if those of you using compressed air for stamping, where you're using pneumatic cylinders, or any of you in the woodworking industry that are using compressed air to mold things or clamp things. A steady pressure is beneficial. Those of you in the automotive industry, paint spraying, you know what it's like to have varying pressures. It varies your spray pattern. So there's a lot of benefits beyond just energy savings to a variable speed drive type compressor. So this graph here really calls into light the cost, or the overall lifetime cost of a compressor. You can see the energy to run it itself, as is about 73%. I've seen it as high as 80. The capital cost is just a small slice of that. So when considering a new compressor, it is an energy converting device. The more efficient it can do it, the better. The chart on the left there shows the different modes of operation. The dotted green line is ideal, and a variable speed drive holds very close to that line. Those of you that are running in the modulation mode, that would be that blue line towards the top there. At zero flow, you're still consuming about 70% of your nameplate kilowatts. That's immense. So data logging helps identify these trends. That's why it's very beneficial to do data logging. Once every 2 years, but 5 years might be getting a bit long. The Fix It Now program allows us to do it every year. So take advantage of that. And simply, we're attaching a amp logger, as you can see in the photo there. It's pre-programmed. We come out and pop it on around one phase. And from that, we can see whether the compressor is loaded or unloaded based on the amperage at which it's running at. And from that, we can gather a lot of information. Not only the unloaded KW, your total plant KW to produce compressed air, whether what time the shifts are starting, what time the shifts are ending. A lot of information that can be helpful here. This chart here shows at the beginning and ends of shifts, you can see the leak rate. You can see in the last slide there on Saturday, you have your continuous flow. Someone left the compressor on, and you're constantly consuming X CFM. So that calls into question how much of that could be reduced, and why was the compressor left on a Saturday? You could have uses where they just needed to keep one piece of production operational. Those of you in the machining industry, you have that one lab with your CMM machine. Why not get a dedicated compressor from that rather than feeding the whole plant, the whole plant's leakage? So hence the name of the header here, knowledge is power. And this is a sample report that's outputted from the data that's provided. I know it's hard to see, but it'll tell us the total KW of your facility, tell you what the carbon footprint of that compressor system is. We'll tell you how many KW you're wasting, what the dollars and cents is that can be saved by going with a variable speed type compressor, and what % capacity you're operating your compressor system at. So it can even help with some capital purchase planning for the next year, those of you that think you're running out of compressed air. But also help us understand what compressors should be staged or sequenced in which cycle. What I mean by that is you may have a variable speed drive that's running as the secondary compressor, and you have a base load or a load unload machine running as the primary. It's rare this happens, but sometimes we do identify where you have controls that are fighting each other. And a simple few button pushes, we're able to rectify those situations and save companies thousands and thousands of dollars. So by doing this logging, can identify things that are very simple to fix.
Excellent. We do have a question from Spencer, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Spencer's asking, when running multiple compressors, is it more beneficial to switch over to one or two larger with new compressors? So when running multiple compressors, is it more beneficial to switch over to one or two larger with new compressors?
Yeah, so we get this question from time to time, and it's a good one. So there's a couple aspects to the answer. One, you may have older technology that you don't want to run till death. And I agree with that. The backup compressors can have more value to you than running them and having to replace them with something new. That being said, if your system does not require the horsepower that your newer, larger compressors are costing to operate, it can be very costly to the company. So say in the evening shifts, you could have a 50 horsepower to cover the load, but you're running a 200 horsepower compressor to do it because it's new. 73 to 80% of our compressor cost is the energy to run it. I would be more in favor of buying another variable speed compressor for that shift. I'm not sure if this answers the question, but data logging is so important in that regard because it'll help identify what the proper setup of compressors should be.
Very good. Well, we don't have any other questions. We're at our 45 minutes. And so we thank everybody for attending and for your attention. We will follow up with the slide deck and also some resources for you to look into for your particular market areas. And perhaps you'll be talking to Brad or Chuck or Tim about assessing your system and talking about how we can bring some energy efficiency from the programs that we've discussed today. So from Fluid-Aire Dynamics, this is Michael Heine, and we thank you for your time and attention today. Have a great day.